Blue Cat Marine launches in 4. Good to see you. Thanks for finally making it. This is Blue Cat Marine and I'm Jim. Blue Cat Marine is half hobby shop and half small business. The aim of Blue Cat Marine is to build and fix boats, store them long term, make a few dollars to cover the rent, and use the boats that we build and rebuild to go on adventures across the planet. My plan for the next 10 years is to build small boats that are capable of having big adventures. I will be taking said boats on said adventures and I'd like to bring you with me. For the next 10 years we're going to be working hard so we can play harder. Every boat's going to be suited for its own particular type of adventure. I need small boats that are going to be capable in a wide variety of conditions. This 14-footer I'm building right now is going to be capable of offshore, near shore, as long as the weather's pretty good. It's also suited for running in skinny water. It's highly efficient because of the hull design. It requires very low horsepower to go a good cruising speed. Due to the hull design though, it can handle higher seas. Blasting your way through mild chop is not a problem. That's why I've decided on another Panga for the build that's going to follow this one. It's going to be a 22-footer. I've got the plans. It's going to be cool. For now, let's put some skin on this boat. And of course, here comes the train. Let's do it. I'm just marking out the exact outline of the transom here so I can cut it properly. Just going to trim out the little outline that I made. Then we're going to put some glass on it. And I'm putting the rougher side, the crappier side of the plywood in because my finished side, we want that on the outside of the transom, right? And just like that, we have a transom. Now I'm going to put a layer of fiberglass on the inside of this transom before I connect it to the frames. First, I'll be putting a coat of penetrating epoxy on here. Penetrating epoxy soaks into the wood. Then I'll put down my standard epoxy for the layup, and it will make a chemical bond with the penetrating epoxy that's already soaked into the wood. And then we'll begin the layup, and that should give me a much better adhesion to the plywood with this epoxy. Is it necessary? No. But I'm going to do it anyway. Penetrating epoxy I'm using is a Total Boat product. It's 2-to-1, just like the standard epoxy I'm using. I've had good success with it. I'm going to cut this piece of glass before I put any epoxy on it. The glass I'm using is just a 6-ounce mat. That'll do. I just have 3 ounces here. And a simple chip brush gets the job done pretty well for me. Just need to get the wood looking wet. That's all you gotta do. Smear it all over the place. Looks like it's gonna be about the perfect amount, 3 ounces on this transom. All right, I'm gonna let that set up a little bit and get tacky. All right, about 20 minutes have elapsed. That penetrating epoxy soaked in pretty good. I mixed up 6 ounces of our standard laminating epoxy, and I'm gonna brush that on and lay this fiberglass down. And then we take our little bit extra here, smear that around in some of the drier spots. Pretty good layup. All right, I'm gonna let this tack up, get nice and tacky. So I've wiped this thing down with acetone, got all the dust off of it. It's had a final sanding, but I'm just brushing on some of that penetrating epoxy here. right, I've mixed up a big mix, some Cabosil and epoxy. I'm just gonna smear it on there the best I can. All right, now this thing is nice and tacky. It's not cured, so I'm gonna put these two jack stands here to catch the bottom of it, so I can kind of get it into place. Oh, look at that. I'm gonna pull these jack stands out so they don't end up epoxied to the hull of the boat. Oh, they would have too, sheesh. Put 200 screws in it. Smear it all around the outsides. Kind of level every edge off, try to fill in the gaps if there's any between the plywood. Yeah, a little sanding, that's gonna clean up very nice. Man, I can't wait. Time to put on the rest of the plywood. The dimension I need is roughly 16 inches. See, I got my pal Jack over here help me carry the load. I'm switching out to a big fat bit, so I'm just gonna do a little countersink for the head of the screw. So my dumbass mixed up a batch of regular epoxy instead of the penetrating epoxy that I wanted to use. It'll wet this plywood out just fine. I lost a small chunk of footage here, but fortunately I'm running a concurrent time lapse as I'm doing this project. This plywood panel is put on exactly the same way that the transom was. So before we can put the next panel down, we've got to ferre out the one we just added. You basically just use your planer or a sander and get it on the same plane as that chine log is, so the next panel will come down smooth. And I also took the liberty of tabbing the keel to the frames with some small squares of fiberglass there. Back here, back. I am so crazy pissed right now. I'm gone for just a couple of minutes to get some beverages from the store. Somebody came in and vandalized my boat. Look at this. Can you believe this shit? Bastards. Plywood likes to be rigid and it doesn't like to twist, so this next part got complicated. All right, so we have two pieces that are going to work. This piece and this piece. I made several miscuts and I broke two pieces of plywood trying to get this system figured out. On several boats that have a keel that twists forward in this fashion, I've seen where folks have used pieces of plywood and planked it off. And then of course you wrap it in glass and some thickened epoxy to strengthen it. I think this is going to work out for us. All right, here's where we are at so far. It is not pretty, but I believe it's functional. A little transition here that kind of got chunked up a little bit from the planer going by, but that's all right, that'll fill. We go from overlapping here to butting here because of the angles, the way they change. I'll tell you what though, that thickened epoxy in between these, basically, it feels like it's turned them into just one board. This is our missing piece, and it's got to make some impossible twists. I put some relief cuts in the back of it, that's allowing it to bend a little bit better. Now all we gotta do is stick this sucker in there, and that's pretty much it for planking this side of the hull. It's looking pretty good, I gotta tell you. Thought I'd give you some detail of how this plywood sits in that ledge, right? We've got the top of the chine log cut at an angle. The plywood goes from the keel and lays right in that little shelf right there and butts up against. this plywood here, right? That's a V right there. Just drop it right in there. Hey! Oh, putting it on thick. You gotta smear it down all in the cracks in the corners. If you can't smear, well, you ought not be building a boat. If you can't smear, I'd like to hear from you. Because I'm not that great at it. And these relief cuts that I made on this board, all those gaps have got that glass reinforced epoxy in it. And when it bends and twists and you get it screwed down, then all this stuff dries and it becomes rock hard. And smear and smush. It is not perfect. It's ugly. But when we fill it in, it's gonna work fine.